just attended 2 days of Damon Burton's OptimizeLive, his small group mastermind all about good SEO and how to get more people buying from you without having to pay for advertising. I'm excited to dive into the notes that he shared today. There's really not anything I'm going to hold back from. We're going to dive into it, talk about it, share some of the insights, some of the high-level stuff that maybe you've been wanting to know about SEO for your own business, and we'll go from there. Before we dive in, though, quick word from one of the amazing businesses that sponsors the podcast. If you ever wanted to advertise your business on the show, you can always reach out. Blake at goodadvicecoaching.com or support the podcast on our Patreon, patreon.com/goodadvice. Let's get into it. Life is constantly moving quickly. And in fact, I find myself more and more wanting a pause button to capture some of those special memories with my family. That's why I love what the team at Duncan & Stone is doing. They've created high-quality keepsake journals for every stage of life. From people who are freshly engaged all the way to welcoming their first child, Duncan & Stone has a series of journals that are incredible for capturing some of those precious memories, and not just memories, but the stories and conversations that you want to have with your loved ones one day. Personally, I love the Dear Daughter Journal because it captures all of the amazing memories that I want to be able to tell my daughter Maylee one day. The team at Duncan & Stone understands the value of keeping these memories close to home. That's why they've spared no expense in creating high-quality journals that are designed in-house because they know how precious these memories are. Check out duncanandstone.com and see some of the journals that will walk you through every stage of life. They're easy to use and beautiful to display, and most importantly, they capture what matters. Again, go to duncanandstone.com to find out more. So let me give a little bit of the background here and a little bit of the context. First things first, this is going to be a little bit of a different kind of episode. This isn't going to be an episode. A lot of our content is around teaching, training, sharing a concept. Let's talk about X topic. Let's really dig into the details here. Let's give you like the functional stuff you actually need to know to do this thing, such as maybe you're hiring your first employee, maybe you are having to let someone go, maybe you're in a sales conversation, maybe you have a difficult customer. All of those things we talk about on the podcast. And today, I don't really have, there isn't like a quick and dirty, like we're doing X today, but I want to talk, after I finished this program with Damon, I was so just mesmerized by how incredible this was that I thought we got to get into this a little bit today. We got to talk about this, mostly because SEO is a very nebulous topic. It's very ambiguous. I think a lot of us know that it's important, but many of us don't really know how to legitimize the cost around it. And what I have learned in the last 2 years is that there's actually significant misunderstandings about it. And worse, some very bad actors in this space. So you've probably said this before, man, this is really expensive. Like, what does this even really do for me when I pay for good SEO? In fact, I was meeting with a customer earlier this month, and we were having this exact conversation. He was like, man, I know I need to do this, but like, I can't legitimize the cost. Well, legitimizing the cost becomes very easy if it actually works. Right? This is true for many things in our business. It's very easy to hire an employee if we know that hiring that employee actually is going to work. We've talked about this before in the world of sales. The reason we don't do things is because we're not certain that it's going to work. There's a lot of risk associated with it. It's like, do I really want to spend my money there and not get the meaningful ROI behind it? So what I want to do today, we're not really going to, it's not like a 1, 2, 3, like do X, Y, and Z, but I do want to share some very important concepts with you. And especially if you manage your own website, if you do some of your own, you navigate some of your own organic marketing, I think this is going to be pretty important for you today. Why do I care about SEO? Let's get a little bit more into that conversation. So some of you know this about me, some of you don't. A couple of years ago, one of my very good friends went through a divorce, actually about a year ago, now that I think about it, a little over a year ago. He went through a pretty difficult divorce. In that process, he was running an SEO company and he was also running another business. And through all the conversation on splitting up equity and making both parties whole and all these things, it got very ugly. It got very stressful. And he basically approached me and said, "Hey, I have this SEO business. Do you want to take a swing at it? Do you want to just see, experience a little bit of the world of SEO? I got a couple of employees. They're great people. They're very easy to work with. Do you want to just give it a shot, see where it goes?" And honestly, man, I'm at a point in my life that if you were to take my business and, we chatted 6 months from now and you're like, "Yeah, the whole thing burned to the ground," I'd be like, "Okay, no big deal." That's kind of where I am now. So there's very little risk there, but I had been pretty interested in SEO. I had thought a lot about it for my own business. One of the things, and this is just me being totally transparent, one of the things that I had been working on for good advice is consulting is very difficult to sell. It's very ambiguous to sell consulting. I've had some very good customers over the years. I've had some very amazing, just grateful people who we've had there's just been some amazing outcomes that have come with those people. And I love doing good advice. I love the work I get to do with good advice, but it's a tough sell. And I've learned more and more how hard it is to sell, because as soon as I rolled out my podcasting service, my other business, Podcastable, I started to realize, wow, sales is a lot easier when you have an actual tangible product associated with it. And this is if you think about this is just how we buy in general. Whenever we buy things, it's rare that we buy based on brand, unless we are like a lifetime lover of that brand, like we're diehard fans of the brand. More often than not, we like to buy when we can draw a direct line between what I'm getting or what I'm paying for and what I'm getting, the outcome for my business. So a good example of this, if your toilet's clogged and you can't figure out how to fix it, you know that by hiring a plunger, they're going to fix your toilet. It's a very easy line from point A to point B. What I found in the consulting world is much of it has been built on my brand and trust there, and people who listen to the podcast who end up working with me, who I've spent, 6 years now painstakingly building trust with other individuals. So I have customers today that I would never have had in my first year of business or my second year of business or even my third year of business, just because, as you know, it takes an immense amount of time to build trust. So what I had been looking at probably about 2 years ago was, is there something I can sell that is product oriented and takes away the burden of time, the selling cycle of time that currently exists with good advice? Now, separately, coincidentally, with Podcastable, and I've shared the story of Podcastable already, but bottom line with that, I knew there was value in launching shows. I knew there was value in producing shows. We already have customers that we're doing both for. But I knew there was this third angle of organic growth for someone's show where, not only could we produce someone's show, but could we actually use the power of SEO to cause someone's show to rank faster and grow faster than it did for me. I'm very fortunate to have a very good podcast and to have lots of listeners. And, those of you faithful ones who listen to the podcast week after week, I appreciate it. I'm glad you find value in the show, but this has come, we have 450 plus episodes on the podcast. That includes some of our unnumbered ones too. 450 plus episodes on the show. So that's a lot of years of hard work building this podcast up to what it is today. What I was thinking about was, is there a way for someone to do it faster? I had lunch with someone today and I said, hey, are you prepared to do this for the next 2 or 3 years? Like that's what you should plan for. That's what you should be thinking about the next 2 to 3 years. But what if there's a way to do it faster? And so I had been looking at SEO to offer as like another package of the service with Podcastable. So anyway, all the love in the world to my friend, but I realized that, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. He had some great customers, really awesome people to collaborate with. And I immediately became, head underwater in the deep end about SEO. And the thing that was really difficult also was like managing people around certain expectations and then not knowing enough about the industry to really know if I needed to shape new expectations, if I needed to change my expectations, and really what are we accomplishing for our customers? So a good example of this is one of the conversations that came up in this was, okay, our customer is ranking number 65 on Google. So what that means is you're on the 6th page, the 5th slot. So when you search for, AV equipment, when you search for AV equipment, they are the 65th result. So what does good SEO look like? Well, after 6 months to a year, we've gotten them up to spot 45. We got them up 20 spots. And so we can say, hey, it's working. We moved you up 20 spots. And I don't want to down anyone, or I don't want to dump on an entire industry. But something felt really off about that. It felt really off about it to me because I was thinking, man, some of these businesses are spending $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 a month. I mean, we're talking 30 to 40K a year to move up from result 65 to result 45. And, here we are saying, yeah, look, it's working. It's working. Now, is it making a difference? Yes. Is it worth the expense? I don't know. I don't know if it is. So I found myself in this really, and this has been true. If you listen to the show long term, this isn't like a new story thread for me. I've always been really big on doing business honestly. But also I have deep conviction about delivering on what I said I would deliver on. I had a guy one time very early on with good advice. I think I was in like my 3rd or 4th month. I sat down with a mentor and we were talking about my business model. And we were talking about some of the results that I wanted to accomplish with people. And some of the numbers that had gotten thrown out was like, I want to times 5 someone's revenue, which to this day, by the way, 6 years later, I've never times 5 someone's revenue. Now, some awesome times 2, times 3 that have happened, but never like a times 5. And that was like the big, so if someone comes to me, we're working together, they're making $200,000 a year. It was, well, I want to get them to $1 million. And by the way, like I said, we've had some pretty incredible results with some of our customers, but this was also at a time where I was trying to work with someone for like 60 to 90 days. And here's the deal. There is literally no recipe to go from a low 6-figure business to a 7-figure business in 60 days. It's not going to happen. It just isn't. But that's what I was thinking about. And so I was chatting with this mentor of mine. He was like, well, what happens if you can't accomplish that? And I was like, well, I give them their money back. I don't want somebody's money if I didn't do what I said I was going to do. And he goes, Blake, you can't be so purist about this. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, that's not how business works. Like you can't run a business on giving someone full refunds because you couldn't. But I was like, well, I mean, shouldn't I refund it if I didn't give them, the result that they asked for? So all that to say, I've always been very honest and direct about results. And so something felt really weird to me about this SEO game. I was like, man, something's just off here. This just doesn't feel right. This doesn't make sense to me. I think also for me, what didn't really make sense was I thought about for myself. I thought, would I spend my money on this? And I thought, no, I don't think I would. I really don't think not at the price point, not at the price point that we're asking the customers to pay. And like I mentioned, some customers who were paying some pretty sizable contracts. Is the right word? Sizable, just large contracts. It just didn't feel right. So anyway, here I am, like I'm trying to learn about sailing while building a ship, I guess. All this to say, on the same token, I saw immense upside here. And the reason for that is, and I realize, by the way, now that we're 15 minutes into this conversation, I've gotten real long-winded on this, so I apologize. Around this time, I had continued to build a relationship with Damon Burton. So Damon, let me tell you a few things about Damon real quick as to why I was such a fan of Damon. And I've had a lot of just superstars on the podcast, but Damon came on my show in 2018, I think. So like 6 years ago. Very low-key individual, very humble, kind, just a great dude. Like, when you meet someone that you're just like, man, this is a good guy. This is a good dude. This guy does good business. We had a lot of values in line together. To this day, it's been years since then. To this day, I've had hundreds of people on the podcast. I say hundreds. I've probably had about 250 people on the podcast at this point. So over a couple hundred people on the show. I have had only one person send me a gift after coming on my podcast. Damon came on my show and he sent me two things. He sent me a copy of his book, which, a lot of marketers would do that. But you know what else he sent me? He sent me 2 cupcakes in a jar. He said, hey, for you and your wife, have a special treat on me. And it's just like it sounds. It was like these really cool, nice mason jars. It was from some company. I can't remember what the company was, but 2 really cool mason jars. And it was, like cake in a jar, basically. But I've never to this day and never before have I ever gotten a gift like that from someone. And this is how Damon does business, by the way. So immediately I liked this guy. I thought, okay, I want to follow this guy because he's doing something right. Now, Damon, a little bit more about Damon. I knew some details around Damon. I knew he had some pretty high profile customers, like the Utah Jazz doing all of their SEO. Since then, he also has Russell Brunson doing SEO for him. Russell Brunson's probably one of the best known digital marketers in the world. Tony Robbins, he does all of Tony Robbins' SEO. And by the way, this isn't like, he's not doing like contract work for these people. Like his company is a vendor of these businesses. So Tony Robbins, who's the business coach, the life coach, whatever you know him as, but billion-dollar personality in the world, hired Damon earlier this year to run all their SEO for them. So Damon runs a multi-million-dollar business. He has about, I think, 30 employees. Just a solid dude, great guy. And like I said, I have followed him for years. Just have always really liked the way he does business. Well, so Damon, he came on my show. I came on his show. We've been chatting about some work together for Podcastable, for a show that he's thinking about. And he mentions a couple weeks ago, hey, I'm going to do a very small here in Utah. He's in Salt Lake City, Utah. I think he's in Salt Lake City, actually. I can't remember. He said, hey, I'm going to do a very small thing, maybe 30 people. I'm going to do a mastermind all about SEO from top to bottom. Here's all the things you need to know. And we're just going to get into it. I'm not going to hold anything back. I'm not going to hide anything behind like a paywall. It's, I'm going to have a 4-figure price point on this. And if you pay to come, I'm literally going to teach you, I'm going to teach you everything. Instant. For me, it was instant. I was like, I have to go to this. I have to be involved in this. Long story short, I don't have the time today, which this might be like the first gut punch. You might be like, hey, you promised, you said you were going to. I don't have time to like go through every single detail about this. And also, I don't think it would do right by Damon. I think it would devalue the hard work Damon has done in 20 years in the SEO world to give like every single tip and trick, I guess. Now, if Damon was like doing this show with me, he'd probably say, knowing Damon, he'd probably just be like, oh yeah, go ahead, give it all away. I don't care. Because that's just the kind of person he is. But I do want to talk a little bit about about the things that came up. I want to settle some misconceptions about SEO. And if you're still with me after 20 minutes, I really want to not necessarily go through Q&A, but some very common things that I hear in the SEO world and how you can decide if it's the right purchase for you. Now, I will be very candid in that I am prepared to roll this out. I'm already selling it as a package for podcasting, for Podcastable, but I'm going to offer it as a done-for-you service as well and really work on our local clientele about this. Because with my friend's business, all those customers, we're talking like Australia and like these random places. So I've always had my eyes as a result on local Northwest Arkansas, growing the NWA culture around this. And by the way, there isn't really a lot of marketing companies that only do SEO, which I really like about Damon. Damon doesn't do any digital advertising. He doesn't do anything, anything like that. It's all about organic growth for your website, significantly growing the conversions on your page without having to pay for ads. I love that model, and that's the model that I want to do. So I don't know yet. I haven't decided yet if this is going to be like a done-for-you service on the Good Advice website. What I think I'm going to do is roll out I guess I'm just collecting businesses like Monopoly pieces. I think I'm going to roll out another business just to keep services attached to what the business is. This is one of the reasons why I started Podcastable, was because I was getting people inquiring about podcasting, and then they're like, but you're a consulting company. So it just got confusing. So I think it's going to be called Better Rank, because it's all about improving your SEO rank. So I'm going to have Good Advice. I'm going to have Podcastable, and then I'm going to have the Better Rank. And maybe these are just like programs within the page. I don't know yet. I'm still figuring all that out. But let's talk about SEO. Let's talk about, why would a company ask you to pay $600, $700, $800, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 per month to do SEO for your business? And is it worth it for you to spend money on that? I realized through Damon's training that much of what I had learned and been shown about SEO was wrong. It's like that Luke Skywalker was from the new trilogy where he's like, amazing, everything you just said was totally and completely wrong. And this isn't fully true. I've been given some great advice in the SEO world, but I've realized that there's a different way to go about it. And Damon's methodology really resonated with me. So here's a good example of this. Going from result 65 to result 40. Look, it's working. We're moving you up the pages. It is working, but from Damon's point of view, here's what he basically said. This was in like the early part of day one. He said, guys, your goal after a year is to get them to page 1. And it's not like an aspirational goal, like over the next 5 years, we're working to page 1. It's no, when 12 months are done, they're on page 1. That's what needs to happen. They need to be on page 1 because, and we all know this is true. He said, who goes to the second page on Google results? Who does that? No one does that. No one's going to find your business on page 4. No one's going to find it on page 2. People are going to scan the entirety of page 1, and then they're going to click the X box and move on, or they'll go to one of the results on there. So we said, bottom line, what needs to happen with SEO, you have 12 months to get them to page 1. That's what needs to happen. Page 1 and converting into sales. If they aren't on page 1, if they aren't converting into sales by the end of 1 year, you drastically need to change and retool the way you're doing SEO for them. And he was like, look, it hasn't been, it's not that I haven't had customers where we realize around month 9 that, hey, this keyword is not panning out for us. These terms are much more competitive than we realized. 1 year And then he talked about how, we're going to make it right. We're going to do another extra quarter. It's no cost to you. We're going to get you to that page, what have you. So he was like, sometimes it can take a little bit longer, but the hard deliverable is page one, making money. And this instantly solved a big problem I had with SEO of that thing I mentioned about not feeling right about it. Like, I'm asking for people to pay just to move up their ranking. He was like, no, this needs to have an actual tangible ROI. It needs to make them money. So I love that. And I think if you have SEO companies, man, maybe I'm dunking a little too hard on this industry. But if you have SEO companies that you've worked with for over a year and you're not on page one, you might think about hiring a different SEO company. It may be that, especially if you spent money on SEO in the past and you didn't get to that point, but it was hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, maybe you weren't working with a great SEO company. I think this is also, I find this a lot like in the coaching space. There's no certification that's associated with being an SEO, marketer. So there's plenty of bad actors out there. And we'll come back to that here in a second. The other thing that Damon did a great job of, and I already mentioned it, he said, you're getting to page one in 1 year. The thing that he mentioned over and over and over and over again was it takes time. Now, if you don't really understand how SEO works, if you don't really know how this whole thing is put together, the basic premise, if I could just make this as dumbed down as possible, the basic premise is that, let's say someone is Googling, what is an accountant? When Google is pulling all the possible websites related to accounting, and you can know there's hundreds of thousands, probably millions of this question, what Google has to do is they have to decide what website is most credible. So what goes into credibility? What determines you being the credible website? There's a lot that is factored into this. One of the things that Damon talked about was his team spends the entirety of the first 60 days just fixing the website, page speed, broken links, all these things that probably sound and feel really rudimentary and not important. These are all, I think about a teacher who's grading a paper and doing the red pen. All of these things are those red pin marks on your website. And ultimately, it's what Google is using to say, you know what, I'm actually not going to put you at the top of the results. I'm going to put someone else at the top of the results. But the other thing that Damon talked about was that Google, for all of its use, operates very slowly. It evaluates much like we operate in terms of the trustworthiness of other people. We develop that trust over time. You rarely meet someone and within a day decide, I'm going to trust you no matter what. I'm going to refer business to you no matter what. What often happens is over the course of several months or years, we decide, you know what, that person is worthy of my trust. Now, there are people who are listening who you give trust very freely. I don't have a problem with that. There's not necessarily anything wrong with that. But I do not think that that is how most people operate. And I'm willing to be wrong about that. But I think most people, we build trust with one another. We don't just naturally give it to someone. So Google's the same way. And so one thing Damon talked about was you have to emphasize with your customers again and again and again and again, this is going to take time. It's actually the same conversation I have with people who start a podcast or who advertise on my show is, hey, what are your goals with this? And if someone says, yeah, I'd like you to air an ad next week, and I'm hoping it makes me a lot of money, I typically say, hey, the podcast isn't a good fit for you. Or if I'm talking to someone about starting a podcast and they're like, you know what, I'm looking to try this out for the next 2 weeks. I'm like, man, you should find something else to try out for 2 weeks because you're not going to see an ROI on that. These are things that are, it's you're planting seeds and you don't harvest the crop next week. You harvest the crop a quarter from now. So we talked about, I emphasize again and again and again, getting people on the right level of expectations of this is going to take a year. Now, will we have some wins? Absolutely. And will there be some of those freak deals where someone's business just explodes with growth in the next 5 or 6 months? Absolutely. But in general, it takes about a year. Now, I point this out because there are many bad actors out there who what they will do is they will tell you, hey, if you work with me, we're going to get you to page 1, or we're going to get you your SEO in a great place in 30 days. You can just know that no one knows SEO better than Damon. And from his own perspective, these people are liars and cheaters. They want to cheat you out of your money. I say it's from his mouth. We talked about scammers and people who aren't delivering. Now I'm using the words that I took away from this. He would never say something so aggressive because he's such a just humble, low-key dude. But it takes time. It takes a long time. And 30 days is not enough time. It's like when I do podcasting, or maybe let's talk about consulting customers. You know, sometimes in the early conversations of a new consulting customer, they say, "Well, what kind of sales differences? Like if we're going to be working through sales." So someone says, "Well, what kind of sales differences are we going to see in the next 30 days?" I typically say, "Probably none. You're probably not going to see any differences." Because in the next 30 days, all that we're doing is understanding how your business operates. And I know the red flags that you've given me. I know the issues that you've told me. But yeah, there's plenty of things that maybe you don't even know are wrong with your business that I have to get a handle on, that I have to get eyes on. So it takes an immense amount of time. The other thing about this is good SEO should be making you money. You know, let's say you have the right expectations. You know it's going to take a year. You know there's the goal is to get you to page 1. It should be making you your money back. More than your money back. If you've done SEO for 4 years and you've never made a sale on your website, you need to fire your SEO agency. If you've been doing SEO and you've been spending $1,000 a month for the last 3, 4, 5 years, and you've only made 1 sale, you need to fire your SEO agency. You should be making, at the end of a year, your page should be converting and making customers for you, making sales for you. The other thing I want to mention, I have this whole page file of all these notes. So I'm trying to think about, you know, what all I want to share and what's actually important to share. The other thing is content. And actually, this is a big one. I'm really glad I'm probably going to just end on this one because we're getting pretty long-winded on this discussion. But we live in a world of AI and people love their AI content. In fact, with ChatGPT on the rise, I've even heard people say oh, content's easy. Content's easy now. I can just have ChatGPT write it for me. And I even see this on LinkedIn, by the way, where you can just tell someone's social media post has been written by AI. I get inbox messages that are clearly written by AI. If you've listened to the podcast more than this episode, you know how I feel probably about AI. I think, and I'll just set the record straight, I love the tools that AI provides. I love the quality of life that AI can do for you. But beyond that, AI is not the core of your business. It's not the core of your offer. It's not the core of how you do business. And if you make that mistake, you are heading towards a train wreck for your business. But on the topic of AI, whenever AI was first, this is even before necessarily ChatGPT was becoming very popular, I'd say about 2 years ago, AI was really making waves. And one of the conversation points around this was, I can just have AI write all the content for my website. And I refused to do that. I have a newsletter that goes out. I post on my website. I post on LinkedIn. And I just thought, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep it legitimate. I'm going to keep it genuine. I do not want to build a brand around what AI has written for me. And I'm glad that I approached it that way because my suspicion was that Google was eventually going to penalize websites for this. Sure enough, earlier this year, Google came out with a new update that penalized AI content up to 40% of their results, their impact in their results, if they were using copied material or AI written material. So businesses that really tried to build their brand around it now suddenly have to not just start writing legitimate content, but had to actually redo all that content and take it down to stop getting penalized. So, for you and your business, if you're looking to rank your page better, you have to get content on the page. That's because the more content that's there, the more Google can trust you and know that you're an expert on what it is you're talking about. It's not just for like expertise related content, but like if you're a roofer, well, guess what? There are hundreds of roofers probably in your city, if not dozens of roofers in your city. So how does Google know which one's legitimate? It's not enough just to see the website. Now, Google reviews help a ton with that. Your local SEO helps a ton with that. But content is essentially Google's way of saying, hey, look, this person knows what they're talking about. They're doing a great job with it. So that's something else I think that's associated with good SEO is you're also getting good writing. And again, you get what you pay for. You can go to Fiverr right now and find someone who's like, I'll write 10 articles for you and the next week for $20. Do you really think you're going to get good content from that? And here's another way to think of it too. Because this question came up at the mastermind. Someone said, well, does Google really know? And Damon goes, you think that for as smart as you are, you think that Google, which has its own AI that it's built and is literally one of the biggest companies in the world, you think their algorithm isn't smart enough to know if what you're writing's junk or smart? Like, do you really think that? So Google knows, just like you know. So if you want Google to see you as more credible, you get what you pay for, and you have to get good content as a result of that. Okay, I think that's good on the crash course of it. So all that to say, keep an eye out. I'm going to be rolling out Better Rank here in the very near future. I don't know how much I'm going to talk about it. The more I do this kind of stuff, the more I feel like I dilute the message a little bit of like, I do this, I do that, I do whatever. But it's been a fun 6 years. We're actually coming up on our 6-year anniversary. And it's been fun to sort of like develop these products, these brand pieces that the road has taken me on the path of getting these things, acquiring these things, developing these skill sets, and adding it as another feather in the cap. And ultimately, the way I see Good Advice going is I envision it being not necessarily a one-stop shop, but when it comes to genuinely good things that people need to grow their business, I want to be an expert in that. I want to be able to target different verticals that can genuinely grow someone's business. So we have the consulting side of it that is mostly around sales and customer retention and leadership. These are all kind of like scale related, developing systems and processes. We have Podcastable, which is really like the customer facing side of your brand. It's using a podcast to grow and develop your brand and build trust. And then we're going to have Better Rank. That is going to be the organic, the technical in the weeds side of the actual stuff we'll do to grow your business. So who knows, in 5 years from now, maybe it's all under just a beautiful goodadvice.com website. I don't know. We're giving it a shot. We're just we're building the ship while we're out to sea, So all that to say, if you've been looking for good SEO, if you've been looking for SEO that actually works, I have an offer for you. I want you to email me, blake@goodadvicecoaching.com or blake@getpodcastable.com, and just mention SEO in the title. What I can tell you is that there's no free offer here. There's no, I'm a firm believer in you get what you pay for. So there's no free offer here. There's no heavily discounted offer here. But what I will say is I'm willing to, as I get Podcastable, as I get Better Rank off the ground, for a few people, I can't do this for a lot of people, but for a few people, what I'm willing to do is a delayed payment we go for 12 months. And if the page gets to page one, in converting into actual conversions, cash money made, I'm going to ask for that year retroactively, and then a retainer moving forward as a customer of better rank. So I'm probably going to do that for maybe up to 3 people. I already have some SEO customers, but what I would like to do, these SEO customers are really through the processes that were taught to me and the business that I mentioned earlier in the episode. With Damon, I have a whole new process, a new approach from top to bottom, and I want to go with that and try that out and see where that goes. So I'm going to be selling pretty heavily this service, probably starting early October. But what I'm willing to do is with a few people, I'm willing to do this sort of 12-month delayed invoice. So all that to say, that's something you can reach out about if you're curious to know more. So, hey, thank you so much for listening today. Again, I apologize. It wasn't like like I said, here's the practical thing you can go do. But what I will say, I guess the practical thing is, if you're not doing something to grow your business, remember, it's not true that if you build it, they will come. You need an actionable way to actually generate leads for your business, to generate interested buyers for your business. Otherwise, your business will wither and die. So, thanks for listening to the show today. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for those of you who support the podcast, either on the Patreon or through our advertising. That's today's good advice. We'll catch you later. See ya.